Hello and welcome to India Tonight with me, Ankur Mishra and Shivani Gharat. And Shivani, today we have a topic where we need to implement responsible AI. Suppose if another Ankur is there online, another Shivani is there. Now, India has rolled out one of the world's toughest measures against deepfakes and AI-generated misinformation. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technologies Amendment to IT Intermediaries Guidelines, which is effective February 20, that is on Friday, will target synthetically generated content head-on. Platforms must now mandate clear labeling for all AI-created or photorealistic material, embedded traceable metadata, and verify users' disclosure and use technical tools to curb unlawful synthetic media.
Absolutely, Ankur. Now, the headline change has been a drastic 3-hour takedown deadline for unlawful content flagged by the court order or authorized government notice slashed from 36 hours. For the gravest cases, the platforms have just 2 hours to act. Supporters hail this as critical protection, yet critics, including digital rights groups and legal voices, sound alarm over free speech. Does this aggressive crackdown effectively guard against AI harms, or does 3-hour rule risk tittling too heavily towards censorship at freedom's expense? But before we go to our guests, let's listen in to some of the reactions on the topic.
स्थिरता ला रहे हैं। फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में हम फूड पर न्यूट्रिशन लेबल्स देखते हैं ताकि हमें पता हो कि हम क्या खा रहे हैं। ठीक उसी तरह डिजिटल वर्ल्ड में कंटेंट पर भी ऑथेंटिसिटी लेबल्स होने चाहिए ताकि लोगों को पता हो कि क्या असली है और क्या एआई से बनाया गया है। जैसे जैसे एआई ज्यादा टेक्स्ट, इमेजेस और वीडियोज बना रहा है, वैसे वैसे इंडस्ट्री में वाटरमार्किंग और क्लियर सोर्स स्टैंडर्ड्स की जरूरत बढ़ती जा रही है।
It's a policy move that the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has undertaken. This is with respect to its crackdown on deepfakes, which is happening as a result of the misuse of AI. Now, on that, the government has given platforms a 3-hour window to take down content that is sort of objectionable. How do you really respond to that? And how are you going to be dealing with the challenges that the 3-hour window is going to present?
Well, first I should say, both as a parent and also as somebody who cares a lot about keeping people safe online, deepfakes and the challenges associated with them are a really important one. It's an area that we've invested quite a lot, and particularly using AI to guard against harmful content like that on the platform is a real priority. One of the challenges with some of the new rules that the IT ministry has come out with is just operationally, it's really hard for us to process requests that quickly, particularly when we want to make the decisions about taking down harmful content quickly, but also not taking down people's content that's legitimately up there. And so I hope that we'll be able to have conversations with the IT ministry and the government of India about how we can implement this in a way that makes sure people have the ability to speak, and that it also deals with a bunch of the operational realities that we're managing.
All right, so to have more discussion on the topic, Shivani, we have eminent guest panel, but right now we have Pranesh Prakash, Principal Consultant at Anekanta and a Fellow at LIRN Asia. And pardon me if I have not pronounced it wrong, but first question to you, I want to come to you regarding the deepfakes, which has been a talking point for a while. But now a clear-cut direction is there, a rule is there, where 3-hour window is given. I want to understand with you in a simple terms, how will it work? Because one has to flag it or government agency has to flag it. How's the implementation you can see?
Firstly, I must thank you for having me on, and I'll say that this 3R notice is not only for synthetically generated imagery and video and audio and so on, but it applies for anything. So there are two separate issues at play here. One is there's the synthetic generation of any kind of imagery and so on. Now, in terms of what platforms need to do, well, users, they need to mandatorily tell users that users need to declare before uploading or publishing any kind of information whether the content is synthetically generated. And if the user fails to disclose such SGI and is later found to be unlawful, then they are liable for penalties. But it's the intermediary's responsibility, that is these platforms, social media platforms mainly, to verify and engage in labeling and provide, if they allow for generation of synthetic material, then to engage in labeling mandatorily. Now, there's a problem with this. There still aren't good standards that we have globally for how to do this, how to engage in watermarking and so on. Now, the Prime Minister, he mentioned the need for standards, except before those standards are properly developed and rolled out, they have brought in place this legal regime which mandates these non-existent standards to be implemented. So there's a clear problem right there. Apart from that, there's a wider problem around these rules, the intermediary rules, which have recently been amended, where users whose content is being removed by the government, they never have to be told that their content has been asked to be removed. And so there is no representation by them. There is no chance for them to defend what they have put up and so on. Secondly, there's no opportunity. Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you. Yes, we can hear you, Pranesh Prakash. We can. Yes.
Okay, sorry. And then secondly, so you can't, secondly, these orders are all secret. Yes. So you don't have a chance to defend yourself. These orders are secret, so even afterwards, you might not actually come to find out that something you have written has been censored. And what kinds of things have been censored? Newspapers, Hindustan Times, Lokmat Times, etc., have been censored by the government in recent times. Member of Parliament's account has been ordered to be suspended in recent times. And we found out about these cases. How? Because X Corp, that is, which was formerly Twitter, they filed a petition in the Karnataka High Court where they included some examples in one of their filings. And it's only by going through these filings that these kinds of things have come to light, that the government has actually censored press on Twitter.
Essentially, Mr. Prakash, you're saying, Pranesh Prakash, you're saying that this is sort of a form of a censorship. But I need to understand, deepfakes have been such a nuisance to the society over the past not just couple of months, a couple of years, especially around the time of elections, the kind of harm that it has done to, reputation of many actresses also. And, the kind of frauds that are happening in the country because of deepfakes. So it is a deep-rooted problem. And the ease of access of creating some of these deepfakes has been one of the biggest challenges of today's time. So my simple question to you is, the buck stops with whom then? Because if this is sort of a form of a censorship, now here government is giving a consumer or, user of a social media platform to self-regulate and self-declare whether this is AI generated content or not while putting it up on social media platforms. And then it is giving an opportunity for social media platforms also also to weigh in whether this is a legit, realistic content or not, with a 3-hour window, with the kind of tech that they have, with the kind of algorithms that they use to push content on a daily basis. I need to understand the buck stops with whom, and, comment a little bit more about this 3-hour window that, that has been given to take down. Because 3 hours is a lot in a social media scheme of things. It takes like less than a minute for a video to be viral.
I agree that deepfakes are a big problem. You won't find any disagreement with me on that. I think ultimately the buck should stop with those who have actually created the deepfake in question, which is harmful, and not labeled it as such, and those who have promoted it. Now, here's the problem. Some of these are actually created for satire reasons. And if you explicitly label that, then the satire might actually be watered down. It might not work. But even if users are to label it for satire reasons, is that allowed? Is there an exception provided? There is no satire exception provided in the rules as they stand. So there are some exceptions which are provided for things like translation and so on in the rules. But the larger problem is at the countrywide level, at a global level, we don't have standards. Now, what the government ought to do before passing laws and making people liable for specific things, they should work to create standards for labeling so that it's very clear what kind of labeling needs to be put, what kind of watermarking. Because again, if anyone can remove the watermark, if a person A posts something and person B can remove the watermark and repost it as real, then that loses its purpose. Any kind of labeling of deepfakes loses its purpose straight away. So how do we actually enforce this? Yeah. How do we actually even and in case it's a comic who's putting something up, how do we give them a chance to say, hey, wait a second, this shouldn't be removed because this was sad and this is clearly protected under the Constitution. There is no mechanism for any kind of
so there need to be set standards. There
needs to be transparency as well. When the government asks for the removal of anything, okay, so this is a bigger problem than just this deepfakes, right? When the government is involved in removing content, there needs to be transparency around it. The government cannot ban a book in India without a public order, but it has banned tens of thousands of social media accounts and posts and so on without any transparency. That's a problem.
So number one, the thing that you're saying that there need to be set standards on, like what kind of labeling should come into play. And the second point that you're trying to make is there needs to be some sort of transparency in terms of like a clear communication on why this particular, video was taken down or this particular content was taken down. So how much of a platform role is it? Because sometimes when it comes to these self-regulation practices, it's a cultural problem where, even if we try to, we don't somehow go ahead and, self-regulate. One of the biggest problems that self-regulation has challenged is the advertising industry, for example, in the country, where, there was always a self-regulation, but still misleading claims were rampant, and not just from the small players and, small businesses, but the biggest of the FMCG players claiming that, this will give you the brightest teeth and, the fairest skin and so on and so forth. So, till government intervened, even these big organizations were not taking steps for self-regulation. So, how much of a role is platforms as well to have that transparent communication while taking down the content?
Well, firstly, in these cases, the platforms don't really care about users' free speech. What platforms care about is that they're not being held liable. It's about their punishment. That's what they care about, and that they will get by over-censoring. Okay, if they over censor, no one can hold them liable. And that's what the rules essentially incentivize. They don't incentivize careful thinking about things, they incentivize over censorship. Now, how should we deal with this? There are a wide number of guidelines. There's a thing called the Manila Principles on Intermediary Guidelines, which talk about the procedural aspects of how to bring fairness into a system of necessary censorship, because everyone recognizes there's a lot of harmful content, a lot of unlawful, illegal content online that can be truly harmful. How do we deal with that? We can't deal with it through secret censorship by the government. And as you point out, we can't deal with it solely through self-regulation by either platforms or by users. That just isn't going to work, right? It needs to be a combination of these. But when the government does get involved, and let's remember, the government hasn't gotten involved when chief ministers are talking about shooting people of a religious minority, okay, and prominent parties are putting up these kinds of videos on social media. The government isn't getting involved in those cases, but the government is asking for censorship of the Hindustan Times and Lokmat Times about videos that they published.
Right. Point taken, Mr. Prakash. Let me also welcome Mr. Pawan Dugal to the conversation. Welcome, Mr. Dugal. We are discussing an issue which is relatable to almost each one of us, everyone who's watching the show, everyone in this country, is deepfake. Now, one of the examples which I was just reading an article, even the Chemist Association has recently flagged a grave concern that fake prescriptions are given to some of the online companies whereby they are accepting it, and they can be generated online very easily. So deepfake is a big problem. So problems like this, now government has come with a solution that 3-hour deadline is given to take off. But don't you think even 3 hours is a long time? The damage can already be done in even 3 minutes. Forget about 3 hours. What is your take?
There is no denying the fact that this 3-hour deadline is also a very extended deadline. See, damage happens instantaneously. So you should, as a service provider, as a platform, take appropriate technical steps in place so that this deep fake or to be reduced or to be removed at the earliest points as we go forward. I'm the firm opinion that this 3-hour period is very well practical, can be done. What is really required is that the government must ensure that it's properly enforced. Otherwise, once I make a complaint and the 3 hours go by, my entire remedy goes for a 6. You ultimately need to provide effective remedy to affected persons. That's of crucial necessity.
Mr. Dugal, quickly over to you. With this 3-hour deadline, 3-hour takedown deadline also requires a lot of automation in place, and considering the cultural and the regional nuances of India with so many different languages, 22 languages, how much is the chance of misidentification of some of the content when it comes to deepfakes?
No problem. Even if there's some chances of misconfiguration or pulling down wrong content, it's better to look at the broader public good. That's the ultimate objective of these rules. The ultimate objective is that the victim of a deep fake ought not to suffer continuous humiliation on an ongoing basis. Now, typically when a deep fake of yours gets uploaded, the damage is almost instantaneous. But the more number of hours it keeps on being available there, the damage is on a continuing perpetual kind of a basis. Therefore, while the service providers will have to come up with technical parameters to remove it as soon as possible within 3 hours, they may say we may land up making a mistake. No problem. Even if the mistake is made and it's bona fide, the law is going to look at the bona fides and will still look at the direction of exercise of due diligence. But to say that, look, I can't do it in 3 hours or I can't do it in 36 hours, also to the mental psyche of the concerned victim and the ultimate damage to the stature of the concerned person. I think in the totality of things, the 3-hour period is well within a reasonable period of time. Yes, if there's a challenge to these rules, let the courts then ultimately decide how these rules will have to be interpreted. But if a the platform is operating within India or is providing its services within India, there's no denying the fact that it will have to ensure compliance with provisions of applicable laws. And that needs to be done, including the IT Rules 2026. Of course, the IT Rules 2026 are not a very ideal kind of a
Right,
posture. Why? Because
right,
India,
Mr. Duggal, point taken. Let me come to you quickly, Mr. Prakash. Government has to make or see the larger good, which Mr. Duggal was also pointing out. Your counter, please, because you are saying that some of these things are also breach of some of the rights also. You know, one is also articulating, I have seen so many comments that what about freedom of speech?
Sure. Now, these 3 Rs, that deadline only starts from when the government identifies something as unlawful, not as deepfake, because this 3 Rs deadline does not apply only to deepfakes. Please remember that. I've repeated that. This is the third time I'm saying it. So for anything that the government feels is unlawful, including perfectly legitimate news items, which as it has in the past labeled as unlawful, which have been removed by platforms because they don't care about free speech, right? They're now required to remove it within 3 hours without any kind of public transparency. So notice that this takedown request has come from the government. Now, all that I'm asking for is for the government to issue notice to whoever's content they are removing, that we are removing your content, and allow a chance for them to respond. Okay, saying this is perfectly legitimate content. Why are you asking us to remove it? To be given a chance to rebut. Okay, a right to be heard is a part of the principles of natural justice. Second, there should be transparency. There should not be a censorship order passed by the government of India without it being made public. They can't ban a book without a public order, yet they are banning all kinds of social media accounts and posts without any kind of public transparency at all. We don't know how many requests the government has made. We don't know what content the government has requested, on what grounds the government has requested. None of that is public. Let the government make all of that public. That's what I'm saying, and give people a chance to actually fight for reinstatement of content that they believe is has been illegally censored by the government. Right now, we don't know.
Absolutely, and this could also end up resulting in a lot of false positives and a lot of damage to many of the campaigns also that are put across on social media platforms. But I'm so sorry, due to paucity of time, we have to conclude this debate, Mr. Prakash and Mr. Duggal. Thank you so much for joining us on this debate on 3-hour takedown window for social media platforms on deepfakes. Thanks again.